what could be happening is like, hey, there's this thing happening in my life, I hate that. But like, that hatred's all right. Like, hey, yeah, that's just, you know, there is this aversion to this thing that's happening. And when it's such a weird thing. It's like when you just see that for what it is, the aversion's like just part of it, but it doesn't sort of have you in its grips. Whereas when we don't see it, we're like in it, and we're like acting it out. We're in it, like we don't see it. And so there's no freedom in that. Like we talk about, you know, the Buddha talked about freedom. And for a long time I didn't understand what that means. I don't even claim to fully understand it now, but like, cause I was like, I remember for me personally, I was like, no man, I'm here to like, I like that end of suffering part. Like, that sounds good. I feel like I'm suffering a lot. Sign me up for that no suffering bit. And then when you talk about freedom, I was like, freedom? Like, what is it? No, I'm here for the no suffering. Like, what do you, like, free? Like, yeah, sure. And you know when people talk about that, I just feel really free. And for a long time, I didn't quite even understand what they meant. But eventually, I started to see sort of that, like the opposite of freedom is like when we say we're caught, it's like, well, I'm not free because I'm busy fighting this battle. Like I'm having this like never-ending argument with life, and I'm busy. I'm not free. People are like, hey, you free? Like, nope. I'll be with you right after I finish this. After I win my argument with life. As soon as I prove to life that I'm right and it's wrong, I'll be right with you. And I remember I'd hear these things like, no, but freedom's available at every moment. I'd be like, the fuck are you talking about? So it's not, see, it can't be based on conditions and circumstances. Because if that was the deal, then the instructions would be really different, right? The instructions would be like, yeah, fix everything in your life, get it to be just where you want it, and then you'll be happy. Right? But the Buddha said, well, no, because then that's dependent on conditions that are always changing. So it's sort of impossible to pull that off. Like, even if you could pull it off for like, you got everything like, okay, everyone's acting the way I want, and everything's the way I want, my place where I live, everything's like perfect. It's like, I know, but it's going to change, right? And like a fire breaks out. Like, oh well, right? You just can't control it enough to get it to where you want. And then the crazy thing is, even when you get it to where you want, what you want changes, right? So then there's that whole variable. You're like, I got exactly what I want. You know, that was George Bernard Shaw has that great quote. He says, the two great disappointments in life is not getting what you want and getting it. So to me, a big piece of freedom is, in a way you could look at it as the freedom is like the freedom from the preoccupation with my problems or my conflicts with reality. I mean, like if we ask everyone, like right now, and generally speaking, like how much is shit going like the way you think it should go, and to what extent is it not going that way? And if your happiness and your well-being is linked to that, you know, heaven help us, right? Like that can't be it. That can't be right. Because life just keeps happening, right? Like stuff keeps happening, and crazy shit in the world keeps happening, and like health issues keep happening. Like when you look at history, I like studying history sometimes, because I can never find a time when that shit wasn't happening. You know, they're like, no, between like 1359, there's like these 10 years where just everything was cool. It's like you look at it and it's just like, yeah, there was like natural disasters and like wars and, and like good shit too, but it's like, it's just this dance of life, like that just keeps happening. And I've always found it to actually be sort of comforting and in a way like, sort of remarkable in a way, and that like the Buddha was talking about this 2,500 years ago in India. And I think like that was a radically different time, right? I mean, I'm imagining just the way people lived and what was going on. This is really different in a way. And yet he's kind of talking about all the same stuff. I mean, externally, like physically, it was pretty different, right? But all the issues seem to be more or less the same. And the kind of emotional, psychological angst that he's talking about is like, it's more or less the same, right? And it's still, it's not like, wow, greed, hatred, and delusion. Well, we've got another one now. It's like, no, it's still those. Or we got rid of, got rid of greed, just hatred and delusion. We're still working on those. Like, no, they're still there. I think I found it comforting. Like, I think for a long time, because I'm from Russia originally, and I was like, it's just a Russian thing. I'm all fucked up just because I'm Russian. Like, no, this dude's in India like 2,500 years ago. And so it seems like it just keeps happening, like it just keeps going, which is like, some stuff you like, some stuff you don't like. Some stuff that's like disappointing, some stuff that like maybe exceeds your expectations. Basically, I think this is what they mean by you win some, you lose some. Right? And then like this dance goes on, and then in the end you die. Well, it just kind of makes you go, well, how bent out of shape do I want to be during that time? Because it seems like that's the variable. Like, well, all this shit happened, and then, I was super bent out of shape about it, or I kind of wasn't, or, And it's hard because then, you hear this and it's easy for it to become a kind of idealistic thing, like, oh, okay, so the name of the game is not to be bent out of shape. I don't even mean it like that. Because that becomes, then you get it like you're bent out of shape about being bent out of shape, and it all starts to like... I think that the issue with that is that we can approach these instructions in two ways. And one way I feel just like leads to more suffering really, which is you hear these instructions as like something you're gonna do. Like, yeah, I like what he's saying, I like what the Buddha's saying. I'm totally gonna get into that. I'm gonna really learn to let go. I'm gonna learn to be at peace. And it's just, yeah, but it's like, it's still this thing you're gonna do someday, even if it's like really soon, like later tonight. And that just, it's, the problem is that creates more self, right? Because now there's more of you that's gonna have to do that. And you're either gonna like win or lose at that game. And it's another way of actually rejecting the present, because it's like, well, yeah, I'm bent out of shape now, but later I'm gonna totally learn to relax. But another way to hear it is not as a plan, not as this like plan of how you're gonna do that someday, but I mean like right now, like now. Like right now, like whatever way you're fighting right now, just take a look at that. You don't even have to stop it, but just like become aware of it. Oh, hey. Just check it out. Is there any way that you're kind of like, It's deep. It's like our whole personality kind of depends on it. It's kind of how you know who you are. It's like, well, I'm opposed to these things. And I know this may sound radical, but like, what would it be like, even just for a minute, to just accept, like, no, it's really like this. Like, there's nothing wrong with this. It may not be pleasant. I'm not saying you gotta like it, but it's okay. There's nothing really wrong with it. Like, what if there's nothing wrong with your life? Which doesn't mean you may have some issues that you're taking care of and there's things you're doing about them, but like that can all be part of it. You see what I mean? I mean, it's important to understand that when I say there's nothing wrong, I don't mean like it's all rainbows and unicorns, or, you know, like it's all just like awesomeness. Like, yeah, like part of life is grief and suffering and pain but like that doesn't mean it's wrong. There's like an extra, do you know what I mean? When we add this, like, it's a different layer where we're like, no, this is wrong. Like, this is fucked up. Not like, oh wow, this is tragic, or wow, this is painful. I'm not saying like, hey, everything's wonderful. But to me, there's this like, it's got a different flavor of this like, no, I reject this. You guys know what I'm talking about?
I shouldn't.
What's that?
I shouldn't.
Like it shouldn't be like this?
Yeah, it's not, you're saying, I understand when things are tragic.
Mm-hmm.
But I think what you're asking is like, when I feel like it should be different.
Right, like it should be different.
Right. When the should gets in there and starts getting...
Yes. But there's almost this kind of weird like splitting off from reality that happens where I'm this me and I'm like, I'm not really part of this. I'm gonna try to fix it. And it's different than like, yeah, like sometimes really horrible things happen. Horrible in that they're very painful. I know for me, I know it because sometimes there's almost this feeling like I want to go like complain to the management. You know, or like I feel like I can maybe, you ever have that? Where you're like, God damn it. Like, it's deep when you're just like, no, this is just organic reality. There's no like customer support with this. Do you have your hand up?
I was going to say that there's something about that lack of acceptance or that like rejection that reminds me of the feeling of the difference between acknowledging or being in and feeling that something's painful and then like having shame around it.
Yes. Yeah. Great point. Wow, yeah. That's good. Yeah, you're right, because there is something, it does kind of hit that nerve, right? Like, there's somehow, like, I'm taking it personally, and there's like it's got, like it says something bad about me that I don't want to, like, I don't want to take on. As opposed to like, yeah, this is just life. Like, yeah, I think like especially in this culture, and maybe because it's like there's more and more ability and sort of this like ability for convenience that it almost feels like, hey, if I do it all perfectly, like there just won't be any suffering. Like it's almost possible, like if I get all the right things and the right thing and I get the right lifestyle and I meditate, do yoga, eat the right things, and like, you know, like I can almost get it to where everything is happy and perfect. And so if it's not that way, it's because like I'm failing in some way. Like I'm failing in some way. So there's this like kind of insult to injury, sort of. Actually, I think you're really onto something with that shame bit. That it does, I can really feel that as you say it, that there is something that kind of like, ooh, get me out of here. It's got that like, yeah, shame is super uncomfortable as a feeling. Have you guys noticed? Like of all the feelings, like, because it's kind of my gig to just sit there and tolerate feeling states. Just to sit there and be like, oh, check us out. Agony. Yeah, agony's like this. Terror. Oh yeah, look at that, terror. Oh, it's interesting. Kind of feels a little electric. But you're right. Like shame is like this, because it's hard to feel shame that objectively, you know. Yeah.
I'm telling myself, like, in this short journey, there's things about myself I don't like, and then I'm trying to practice more love and be like, no, you're just okay the way you are. There's nothing inherently wrong with you. You're just, this is okay. You're working towards it. So it's just, this is just what is, like what you've been saying. And then, but then that's my rational mind, almost like a self-help book, going like, you're okay, you're okay, you're okay, mantra, you know, and it's just like, but then I have this stronger side that's like, no, that's bullshit, you're not okay. You have a lot of things you gotta change about yourself, and this world is not okay. There's a lot of things that need to, and so I don't know how to bridge the gap from, I
get it. You know how you bridge the gap? It's that it's okay that you're not okay. Yeah. Say it a couple of times. Because the problem with the whole like, it's okay, that mantra thing you're saying, is there, no, you're okay, you're okay, you're okay. It's like, yeah, except that part that you never feel like you're okay. So you're kind of always, like to me, that thing is sort of the setup, because it's like I'm trying to convince myself that I'm okay, I'm trying to get, and it's like, but I'm failing at doing that. So, right? So like, well, I'd be all right if I could just accept that.
then comes the guilt thing.
And then you got the guilt and the shame and all those wonderful things. I probably need better words for this, but like, there's kind of these different layers of okayness. Like you're saying, hey, no, but the world's not okay. I don't mean that like, hey, there's no problems in the world, but like, there's problems or situations, and like trying to come up with solutions for those is just also part of the process. This isn't a prescription so much for how to do stuff or not do stuff. It's more about how we're relating to it. Because that thing is to say in a way that like you're not okay, right? Like, say, well, how are you taking that? I mean, what does that mean? Because in a way, that's like a pretty crazy thing to say about somebody. Like, I'm not okay. But it all depends on what we mean when we say that. Like if I've had cancer, and be like, well, like, am I okay if I have cancer? It's like, well, no, I mean, it depends. I mean, if we're saying, if okay and that means like everything's healthy, then no. But if it's like, do you see what I mean? Like, but like, well, yeah, I have cancer and I'm sick, and this is what it's like to be sick. This is what it's like to have cancer. Because I think like sometimes when we say that I'm not okay, it's like on this like horrible fundamental level. Right? Like that's what you're, yeah. Where it's like, no, I'm fundamentally not okay. Like I can't really be here in this moment. I can't really occupy.
It's something that's really deep inside. It's not like,
Right.
if I sit back and just logically think about it, it's like, no, you're okay. You're a good person. You're trying. You're, like, but it's just,
No,
not perfect.
exactly. But you're saying it's a feeling, right? It's not a rational thing. It's not like a conclusion. It's like a deep sense, right? But what I'm saying is the only way to get any space or any freedom or any ability, any like capacity to still be here, to still be in this birthright of like in this moment, is to allow that to be there. Like that's the paradoxical part, right? Because if you're like, well, I can't really be here until I work that out. That's like everything else, right? Like, well, I can't really be here until, fill in the blank. And the irony of it is that actually our capacity and ability to actually address or respond to situations is greatly hampered by not being here.
Could you repeat that?
Does that make sense? It was something like that our capacity to actually respond skillfully and to address whatever needs addressing is actually really hampered by not being here. So to whatever extent I'm sort of preoccupied and obsessed with my problems, like I can't even like feel into what's really going on, right? Like I'm busy trying to like get over it, and I can't really be present. And by not being present, I actually am therefore not, I'm not like available for the kind of wisdom and the creativity that I find really is just like the present moment. When I'm really present, like it's just imbued with like creativity and a kind of nourishment and a kind of healing. And I mean, that's not metaphorical, I mean, really. And you've had that, like when you've solved some problem, like, sometimes you get space, like, that thing people do, like, well, let me just sleep on it and get away, and then you kind of come to it with fresh, eyes or whatever, fresh mind, and you're like, oh, it's like right there. I was like, well, how did you not see it? It's like, well, yeah, because you were all like up in it. So that feeling like that, it's crazy. It's like there's this way that the mind will always find something to not be okay with. And therefore, like, it gets to keep its job, right? It's like it's really interested in making sure there's always problems to solve. It's what they sell us too, because it also makes you a good consumer. Talked about that at times. If you look at advertising, it's always like trying to be like, you don't really, what you need, right? Because like content people don't make for good consumers, right? It's not how shopping. It's not what makes shopping go around. Like if you're like, wow, I really don't need these things, it's not going to make much difference, it's just life. Like you wouldn't run and buy things. They want you to run and buy things. So contentment isn't, like it's a really radical thing in a way. And again, I want to just make this distinction because I know I can hear you thinking right now. But everyone always brings this like, but what about the problems? And again, I'm not saying it's content, so therefore, there's no problems. I'm just saying that it's that deeper level, like, it's I guess the distinction is at the level where it's like, no, this is fucked up, so I just kind of reject this. I'm like sort of not even in the world. Or is it more like, well, no, I'm here and this is what's happening, and yeah, there's work to be done, and we got to do this, and we got to do this, and we got to, fight that or resist that, and it's like, and these are the steps we take, and this is how we do it, and these are the, you know what I mean, and you do those things. Like the Buddha wasn't like, well, fuck it, so I'm not even going to teach, right? Or I'm not even going to have any of this. Although he did in the beginning. You know the story? That when he was first enlightened, he apparently sat there for quite some time just blissing out. And he wasn't going to teach or anything. He was just like, I'll just chill. And this angel showed up, Deva they call it. It's like an angel in that cosmology. Apparently she begged him to teach. And he actually said that nah. He said, no, he did. He said, people aren't going to get this. It's too subtle. There's just no way. And apparently she said this is what they call those with little dirt in their eyes. She said, well, some people just have so much dirt in their eye, like they can't see, that you're right, they're never going to get it. And then some people actually, their eyes are so clear already, they're going to get it on their own. They don't even need you. Buddha. But she said there's a third group of those with little, they have some dust, and if they hear the right teachings, it'll clear the rest of that dust out. But it's a little too much that they can't do it on their own. But it's not so much that it's hopeless. And that's all of us. That's the group we're in. I hope. But I guess the Buddha's addressing these issues and he's teaching people and he's dealing with what he's dealing with. But I guess this is the question's right, but how bent out of shape is he as any of this happens? My guess is not very. So it's not that I'm saying let's close our eyes and not see the problems of the world. But if we see them as so wrong that we check out, that we sort of, like you said, no, it just shouldn't even be this way, right? I have that, I get that, it shouldn't be that way. And then I think well, was it ever any other way? No, with the exception of with environmental issues, like pollution, but you can make a pretty valid argument that things are actually better than they've ever been. Compared to hundreds of years ago. And actually I think part of the reason some of this stuff is so intolerable is actually a sign that it's because it's getting better and better, by comparison it's less and less tolerable. Just think about it. There was a time when slavery was and I don't even just mean in the US, it just existed in the world. It just wasn't even a thing. People just had slaves. What's that? Not to the same.
I don't know. I could argue with you on that.
Let's.
But I'm not going to take up your time to tell me that.
You really think so? You think it just is the same? Like a full-on slave trade where people are just...
Like what I just said.
What's that?
I think it looks the same. I think it's glossed over. But yeah. And maybe arguably more because there's more people enslaved now. Maybe because there's more people.
Yeah. Well, we can argue about it. I'd love to hear how you describe that.
The prison system is just a quick point to it. But there's more.
So I'm not saying no, that stuff doesn't exist. No, that stuff's horrible, and of course it exists. But I don't know, if you look at 1,000 years ago or whatever, when it was just yeah, that's what you do. You just enslave. Anyways, let's not get into it. But I don't know, it'd be interesting. It would be interesting to go well, what is our matrix really? In spite of whatever the situation is, And again, I want to be really clear, I'm in no way glossing over those things. But to respond to those things and to have the wisdom and the capacity to do it skillfully and effectively, one must be present. And if you look at, the various leaders who have influenced big change, I don't know, like Gandhi or Martin Luther King or many others. I'm always struck how when you see those people and you read about it, there was this whole dimension to what they were doing that was very present, that was very wise on a deeper level, right? It wasn't just using the same system to try to fight the same thing, right? Well, you guys will just get stronger, and you're throwing bombs at us, so we'll just throw bombs at you. It was like this shift to no, we're going to actually meet this differently, right? We're gonna, what's that?
Attack them with a paradigm shift.
I'm sorry.
Just attack them with a paradigm shift.
A paradigm shift, right?
Yeah.
Because if it's coming from the same place, we're going to have the same results. Whether we're talking about social issues or just our own life. Whatever your issues are and whatever challenges you're facing, do you really think that it could be that you just haven't forced yourself hard enough to do whatever that thing is? You just haven't, here's the thing, you haven't been brutal enough to yourself, and you haven't been forceful enough, and you just haven't demanded it hard enough of yourself. And maybe if you do it even harder, finally, you'll be all right, I'll change. That just can't be it.
I've been thinking a lot about this particular thing because it's not that the thought process I've experienced is not I'm heading in the wrong direction. It's I haven't committed to this hard enough.
Mm-hmm.
My methodology is sound. My commitment is lacking. And there's a real, you really have to follow some of those to the bitter fucking end to realize this actually is the wrong path. I'd be curious as to why there has to be such a total dismemberment of the ego, at least in that direction, to change, rather than changing tactics maybe earlier in the game or being open to a wider array of solutions, rather than just doubling down and going hard in the same direction.
What do you mean by dismemberment of the ego in this case?
For me, I did all of the drugs, and it had to get way past the point where it was no longer working anymore for me to realize I don't know what I'm doing. For the ego to go, all right, fuck it with that.
Mm-hmm.
So that's sort of admitting I don't know.
Right.
And that's obviously an intense and somewhat hyperbolic example. It happens in much more subtle ways than day to day. It takes so much to admit I don't know. I doubt I'm alone in this being successful for everybody. But I'm curious as to your ideas of, just for my own pragmatic life purposes, how can I change course earlier rather than go all the way down dead end street after dead end street?
Yeah, well, the thing about that is, right, is that before that you thought you did know. Yeah. And that's the thing, as long as you think you know, why would you change course? Right? Because I'm saying for all practical purposes, in your own mind, you're no, I know I'm gonna get these drugs. It's gonna feel fucking awesome. Sign me up, right? Like, it still seems like it's working, and if it's not working, it's because like, well, I just haven't tried hard enough, right? Like I'm still gonna arrange it just right. I'm still gonna, right? I'm still gonna. They call it rearranging the deck chairs on the Titanic. Like I'm still gonna set it up. What's that? Yeah.
But the question why is I don't know so fucking hard?
That's a really good question.
Because I've run across this in a lot of areas with myself and with other people. I find it to be very interesting. This is a fairly good question, but
I think actually, I think that actually varies with people depending on how that was. I mean, I actually wonder if it actually has a lot to do with childhood. Like in the environment you grew up, how dangerous or interesting was it to not know? Right? Like to not know, was that actually, no dude, this is life or death, you better fucking know? Or you were in an environment where it was like, actually it's fascinating when I don't know, and it's so curious. I can't wait to see what I'm gonna learn. You know? And there's this feeling like, no, like, well, no, but I'm in control and I gotta keep controlling it, so if I don't know, it's very threatening. But it really prevents us from really taking in like what's available right now. That they always say that like when the Buddha was awakened and he saw reality as it really was, right? Like seeing things for what they really are, not how I feel about it, how I relate to it, what is it to me? We're just like, well, no, it's this. I was talking to someone earlier, and we were talking about getting upset with our parents. And I'm amazed, like I'll get frustrated with my dad, for example. And it's actually astounding me when I step back. I'm like, dude, this guy's been exactly the same, like your whole life. The poor man's 79 years old. Like, you've known him for 46 years. Like, why are you surprised by this? like he's so consistently himself. Like it's actually, I'm amazed that I'm still like, it's like, dude, and it's funny because when I look at that personally, I mean, fill in your own blank, whatever your situation is, it's like what you said, like it shouldn't be like that. He shouldn't have been like this. I was promised a better dad. When we made the deal and I agreed to come into this life, like I was expecting, he wasn't supposed to do this. I was like, yeah, he was doing this. He was doing this before I was born, I'm pretty sure. You too? I'm telling you, customer support. We should all file a class action.
It sucks is when you turn into him.
Oh. Yeah.
Since I got your attention.
Yes, please.
The paradigm shift from here belongs back to that with Mel. Like, he says he hates not knowing, me too, but loves to learn. I mean, you see, we're all here. We love to learn.
Mm-hmm.
There's a paradigm shift. Like, I don't like to not know either, but I love learning new stuff. Maybe somewhere in there's that. That's that willing to be wrong meets this loving to learn thing. And I mean, there's shame in being wrong, I guess, but I think I've heard one of you guys say this, maybe it was Matthew, was like, every time I've been wrong, I knew I was right up until that moment. Found out I was wrong. Yeah. So you can't know, if you're right, but...
I find it on this path especially, it's really good to learn to enjoy being wrong. Changyam Trungpa actually said, he said like this path is it's just one insult after another. I mean, the thing that's actually amazing is that, to get this and to get the teachings of the Buddha and to actually realize it, that's actually what it is. That's what he's saying. He's like, hey, we're all super wrong. Like the way you're perceiving it is totally wrong. So by definition, if you're in this process, that means you're gonna, if it goes well, that means at some point you're gonna realize you've been super wrong, like mad wrong, like so wrong. Like you're not even who you think you are. Like that's pretty fucking wrong. Right? Like the teachings on no self. You mean like my whole sense that I'm an individual self is wrong? Yeah. Doesn't get more wrong than that. So it's good to start to learn to enjoy it. You ever enjoy being wrong? It's fascinating. If you don't get into like shame about it, I think I actually do experience it as being kind of amazing. When you're just like, holy shit, I totally thought differently. I love those moments, like when you really get it and you're like, oh my God, I just didn't see it at all. It's good to learn to enjoy that. Because that's where all the good stuff is. That's where all the learning is. That's where all the wisdom is. I like that thing Vinny used to say this years ago. I don't know if he still says it, but where he talks about awakening and he's like, it's this really great party, but you can't go. Like that you can't show up and then be like, I win. Like there's, like if you're like, haha, I'm more enlightened than you. It's like you can't have it both ways. I like Joseph Goldstein says it this way. Maybe this is a good note to end it on. And then we'll do announcements. He said, do you want to be right or do you want to be happy? Like, would you rather be right or would you rather be happy? And I know when I heard that, I remember I was like, oh, because I knew the right answer is, well, I'd rather be happy. But I could feel that I would totally rather be right. And that, like, how much I wanted to be right. Don't you want to be right at the end? Like, but I was right. And it's like, is that worth wasting our lives on that? We can be such prisoners of that. Actually, an encore note to end on is, they'd say forgiveness is giving up all hope for a better past. You guys heard that one before? Because it's like with the past, it's like, like how many of us are still arguing about it? It's like it happened decades ago. And to me, that's what liberation is. To be liberated from that and to just be here. To get to see all the amazing, beautiful things happening right here, right now. And to be fed by that. Okay. Announcements?
Announcements. Hey, you guys. My name's Jimmy. I'm one of the volunteers here. You can be a volunteer too. There's a deal over there. You can see where the website is to volunteer. But in the meantime, we got a couple of announcements. There's a couple day-longs coming up. Well, a half-day retreat actually with this guy, Stephen Danziger. It's going to be on kindness and transformation of trauma and suffering. It's the blue one up on the desk. Check it out. That's on the 21st. It's going to be from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. And then another day long, it's the yellow flyer. Check it out later with Scott Tusa. And it's going to be working skillfully with strong emotions. And that one's going to be on the 28th, another half day from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. Then there's still room for the Joshua Tree retreat that's going on from the 22nd until the 29th. It's 7 nights. It's this big flyer up on the desk. Check it out. You can still register to go to that one. It's going to be with Noah and Vinny, Joanna, and this guy, Anthony T. Mice. He's a Qigong guy. I don't know him. This sounds interesting though. Also, finally, this whole place, the lights and all that stuff, the chairs, it costs money, the rent is expensive, things are tough right now for us. The Donna basket is over there. Your Donna, your generosity is really, really appreciated. We are feeding each other this stuff. We're taking care of one another. And we put money in that basket. Also, we got to get a new door. It's going to cost us $2,000. And we got to get it done before it starts raining because that door won't stay closed unless the deadbolt is thrown. So when we're coming in and out during Sangha, we got to get a new door. And there's another basket over there, so there's a separate basket for the door Donna too. So give generously as much as you possibly can. I gave a bunch tonight, as a matter of fact. So,
Yeah, how's it feel?
it feels great. It feels great. Things are okay right now, so I can do that. If you can't, somebody else will kick in a little bit extra, so you can be here. Everybody's welcome all the time. Thanks very much, you guys.
Yeah. So we'll just finish up and hey, if you, by the way, if you want to come up and talk, I'd love to, I mean, I genuinely would like to hear like how you see that. And I can't wait to be wrong. No, not at all.
I'll email you.
I might learn something. This is great. I love being wrong. It's my favorite thing.
I'm wrong all the time.
But I'd like to understand like what you're saying. So we just come back to our bodies. And just for this few seconds, can we just say yes to all of this? Yes to the 10,000 joys and the 10,000 sorrows. Yes to the impermanence. Yes to the various pains. That yes, in fact, right now it is like this. May the merit generated by us coming together like this, as a community, as a Sangha, support each other's practice, bow to this moment as it is. We dedicate and share this merit with beings everywhere. May we all be free. Thank you.